4, Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 through 9. Exodus chapter 4, we're going to look at verses 1 through 9. Now, because God is physically dealing, with physical Jews, then if he's going to prove his power to them, he's going to have to use physical signs and wonders. You see that?
That's right.
So that's where we get the idea of speaking of tongues, of healings, and all these physical signs going on. But these were given to Jews.
Amen.
This is not Christian. We're all the way over there.
That's right.
This is all the way back here to Jews. You see? Look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 through 9. The very first sign given, it was intended for Jews to believe, because Jews weren't going to believe Moses on what he said. So God said, Moses, then you're going to do these physical signs to prove to these physical Jews my power. Verse 1, and Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. See, they're not going to believe me. And then verse 2, see, rod turning into snake. Verse 2, 3, and 4. See?
Yep.
Verse 5, they will believe. Verse 6, here's a second sign. Put your hand in your cloak, and then it will become leprous. Verse 7, put it again, and then it will be back to normal. Verse 8, this is important. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first what? Sign. That's the very first sign in the entire Bible. And it was to Jews, you see. And that they will believe the voice of the latter sign, you see. That was intended for Jews, you see.
Right.
Not Christians. We're all the way over there, you see. This was for Jews, you see. Because why? God is dealing with physical dealings with physical people. So it's Jews and Gentiles. There's no spiritual group of people yet called Christians, you see.
That's right.
All right, let's also look at Romans chapter 3, verse 20. Romans chapter 3, verse 20 through 22. Romans chapter 3, verse 20 through 22. Once you have Romans chapter 3, verse 20 through 22, we're going to also look at Romans chapter 4, verse 6 through 8. Romans chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. Now, remember, church, this is very important, okay? Can we believe that there were some spiritual dealings during this time period? Yes. There had to be, all right? So, we're going to look at some of the spiritual dealings here, which is what Jews overlook. So, Old Testament Judaism, see, they focus so much on physical things, they overlook the spiritual things behind the scenes going on. That's very important to know. Hyper-dispensationalists too, they all focus physical Jew, but they don't see spiritual doctrines that are Christian that they can see. So this will be this is why this is important, because this will be very powerful to use to convince the Jews that in their Old Testament, that Christian doctrine is genuine and real, you see? So this is very important. Let's look at Romans chapter 3. We're going to look at verse 20 through 22. Now, this is one of my favorites. This is what you can use powerfully for Jews. You know how you can powerfully convince Jews that they cannot be saved by their law? Because the works of law are imperfect compared to what? God. Now, during this time period, they did not have the righteousness of Jesus Christ. This is long after, you see. So they couldn't get that yet, you see. So that's why it was what? Faith and works for salvation. But now that we have this, see, the righteousness of God by Jesus Christ's sacrifice, what looks better? Isn't this more perfect than doing your work on the law?
Amen.
So this is a powerful argument. So you can show them that they're imperfect to God. And if they're an honest Jew, they're going to admit that. They're going to admit that. Look at Romans chapter 3, verse 20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. So the law can't save you. Why? Because comparing that to what Jesus did on the cross, his righteousness.